Tonight, days after a massive bombing in Afghanistan, 2 American soldiers are dead as the U.S. resumes peace talks. This as the president talks tough on trade.
I am the chosen one.
Insisting it's his presidential responsibility to engage in a trade war with China. And Jill campaigns for Joe.
But you've got to look at who's going to win this election.
The former VP's wife makes a case for the general election. Plus, the administration's effort to end catch and release at the border.
What you're seeing is a row of tents.
And we head to ground zero of the homeless epidemic. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
And welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. 2 American soldiers are dead after a bombing in Afghanistan. This makes 2019 the deadliest year for U.S. troops there since the war began in 2001.
The 2 reportedly were part of an elite Army Special Forces unit and likely died in a firefight, bringing the total to 14 U.S. service members killed in Afghanistan so far this year. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now. Eric, this all comes as talks about withdrawing American troops appear to be making headway.
Well, John, that's right. And just last weekend, 80 people were killed when a suicide bomber detonated an explosive during an Afghan wedding. ISIS took responsibility for that. Well, now the U.S. has lost 2 more soldiers of the 14,000 troops remaining in Afghanistan. Is now the time to pull our troops out, giving more control to the Taliban? Experts reluctantly say yes. Days after this suicide bombing by the Islamic State, 2 American soldiers are dead.
These are barbaric savages, and nobody really wants them running the government. But the problem is that right now the Taliban control at least half of the entire country of Afghanistan.
CBN contributor Chuck Holton just returned from a week-long trip to Afghanistan.
Let's say that we draw down to perhaps 9,000 troops or something like that. In order to extract some concessions from the Taliban to just stop blowing things up.
With the Taliban detonating suicide bombings across Kabul, the president says the U.S. will always maintain a presence in Afghanistan.
That does seem to be the Harvard University of terrorism, okay? It seems to be, and we'll always have somebody there.
Can we trust the Taliban? We're in negotiations with them right now, but if we reach an agreement, in your opinion, are they to be trusted to keep that agreement?
No, absolutely not.
Michael O'Hanlon with the Brookings Institution says while the Taliban is making demands, U.S. officials need to have one main demand of their own.
So the demand with the Taliban, our main partner in this peace process so far, has to be complete break of all ties to ISIS as well as al-Qaeda.
After 18 years of a deadly war where the U.S. has pumped billions into the Afghan economy, Holton says it's obvious the Taliban can wait us out.
Spending our way out of the problem is not working. Killing our way out of the problem is not working. I think what we need to do is leave the Afghans alone and say, you can make your government any way you want. If you want to put the Taliban back in, go for it. But the minute we perceive you to be a threat to the United States, things are going to start disappearing in your country.
Chuck Holton had a chance to interact with U.S. troops while in Afghanistan. He says they still wholeheartedly believe in their mission and that they're doing good work. And he says the Afghan people have a very good impression of the U.S. in part because of the troops that have been on the ground there for such a long time. John and Jenna.
Thanks, Eric. And now to the economy and fears of a looming recession. More troubling news after updated figures from the Labor Department.
They reveal employers added about 500,000 fewer jobs than initially thought. CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from the North Lawn with more. Ben?
Well, Jenna, John, despite the rollback from the jobs report and some economists fearing the worst, Trump's touting a strong economy. Today tweeting, the economy is doing really well. The Federal Reserve can easily make it record-setting. Now, Trump's been pointing at the Fed for not lowering interest rates. He's also no longer looking at a payroll tax cut, saying we don't need it. The president also defended the trade war with China, adding that they've been ripping the U.S. off for years, and it's up to him to take on the fight.
Somebody had to do it. I am the chosen one. Somebody had to do it. So I'm taking on China. I'm taking on China on trade. And you know what? We're winning.
Now, some economists say Americans are taking most of the hit from the president's tariffs. Trump says now that China wants to negotiate a new trade deal as we wait to see the details. John, Jenna.
Thank you, Ben. Well, joining us now is Stephen Moore, a 2016 top Trump campaign economic advisor and a fellow with the Heritage Foundation. Steve, what do the updated job numbers tell us, and is there any cause for concern?
Well, no, look, we still have 7.5 million surplus jobs in this country. So, you know, the problem is we don't have enough workers, not too few jobs. You know, the 7.5 million surplus jobs when there's 6 million unemployed means we have 1.5 million, you know, more jobs than even people looking for jobs. And so I'm not too concerned about it. I didn't like that number, but, you know, when you have the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, the lowest inflation rate in 50 years, the lowest interest rates in 50 years, and the biggest increases in wages for 20 years, I mean, that sounds like a pretty good economy to me. You know, there's some tough sledding ahead because of what you just heard. The Fed is too tight. It has to lower interest rates for sure. And it would be wonderful if we could get a trade deal done with China. I think that would cause growth to go through the roof.
And Steve, what about the annual deficit? You know, it seems like a very few people actually care about this ballooning debt and running up trillion-dollar deficits.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like the out-of-control spending in Washington. That's something you can't really blame on Democrats because Republicans have run Washington for the last few years, although Pelosi is now the speaker. Yeah, you're right. Both parties want to play Santa Claus. They spend too much money. The most important thing, though, to get the deficit down is to keep the economy booming. And, you know, we've had 2 solid years of economic growth. We had 3% growth or just short of it last year. Economy slowed down a little bit this year. But I think you got to keep the growth rate up if you want to make progress in the deficit. And boy, it would be nice if we could get Congress to start spending, cutting spending rather than increasing it as they did in this last, I thought, irresponsible budget deal.
Stephen Moore, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you.
Well, to election 2020, Democratic candidates are working their ground game in Iowa.
This as frontrunner Joe Biden tries to lock in his lead with the first television ad of his campaign. Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson has more on that strategy.
No one is more qualified to beat Donald Trump. That's the message in Joe Biden's 6-figure TV and digital ad buy in Iowa, unveiled this week ahead of his 6th visit to the Hawkeye State.
We have to beat Donald Trump.
A message the Democratic frontrunner's wife, Dr. Jill Biden, is also pitching on the campaign trail.
You have to look at who is going to win.
As the Democrat field begins to shrink and stronger candidates emerge, Dr. Biden is encouraging voters to put issues aside and focus on the big picture.
Your candidate might be better on, I don't know, health care than Joe is. But you've got to look at who's going to win this election.
The former vice president saying this about his wife's comments.
None of our issues will matter if Donald Trump wins. That was the point she was making.
But as CBN News learned in a recent trip to Iowa, not all Democrat voters are confident in Biden's electability.
If it's Joe Biden, that's going to be a big mistake if we nominated Joe.
Biden has done us great, his whole history with us, you know, for the Democratic Party, but I feel like his time is done and we need a little bit more new blood to get in there to fight.
Over a year out from Election Day, some caution Biden might be putting too much faith in the polls as other candidates gain more national name recognition and support for their policies and ideas. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Debbie. And joining us now are Jonathan Swan, national political reporter at Axios, and CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. All right, yesterday we talked about the president's I am chosen statement and how it would be received by a lot of folks. And then today, the Daily News has its take. Can we put up that image? Jonathan, was this a wrong call for President Trump? He's, you know, tongue-in-cheek, but right or wrong call?
I mean, it's kind of a ridiculous sort of statement, obviously, but I think there's a truth there. Forget the religious, dimension to it, but the China issue has festered for decades, and China has been growing in strength. It has been growing in strength militarily, economically. The trade deficit has been expanding, and now this very strange thing has happened, which is that the US business community, anytime I talk to CEOs, Wall Street types, Chamber of Commerce types, the same type of people that were encouraging China's rise a few years ago are now saying, sotto voce, Trump's kind of right. There is an element of recognition, at least in the business community, that something needs to change. Now, people are very worried about the tactics that the president has taken. They worry, particularly economists, that his tariffs are going to send the US spiraling into recession. But there is basically no debate that it's time for a US president to stand up and change the posture towards China.
David, in the media, the president's being portrayed in part because of the "I am chosen" comment as being erratic and fueling some in the GOP to consider or declare that they're going to run against the president. You have Joe Walsh, Bill Weld, and Mark Sanford. It's pretty uncommon to challenge a popular president, an incumbent, especially within your own party.
It's uncommon, but then again, Donald Trump's president, so everything's common at this point. Who knows? Or everything's uncommon at this point. Look, but it's interesting. Joe Walsh and Sanford have one thing in common, both pretty much fiscal conservatives, right? I mean, Tea Party type people. And to me, what that signifies is that they believe this is a Republican Party that they don't even recognize anymore from a conservative standpoint, from a fiscal standpoint.
Looking at the soul of the party.
Yeah, well, the soul of the party as well, but I'll be honest with you, Mark Sanford might not be the guy necessarily to take on Donald Trump when it comes to morality. So let's clear that up. But I think they're going to harp on the fiscal issues and elements there, but it's not going anywhere, so we just got to move on.
Well, it's not just the top of the ticket. In a tweet today, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, she put to rest rumors that she was, trying to replace Vice President Pence. Jonathan, where are these rumors coming from?
So sources in the White House tell me that there's been a flood of inquiries from reporters in the last sort of 48 hours and the 24 hours leading up to that tweet from Nikki Haley with reporting that certain senior aides had been trying to encourage the president to replace the vice president with Nikki Haley. But no one's run a story on that. So that's why she described it as rumors. But that's the context. Apparently, there's been a lot of inquiries coming in and people asking questions, and that's obviously why she's trying to snuff it out before someone actually publishes it.
Do you think we'll see her run for the president's seat? If not in 2020, maybe down the road.
I wouldn't be surprised if she did, but I have no inside knowledge whatsoever of her intentions.
I think it's a no-brainer that she's going to run in 2024. I don't think there's any question about that. I think what's interesting here is that if for some reason Nikki Haley replaced Mike Pence on the ticket, I mean, you might as well just mail in the L for Donald Trump. Mike Pence and evangelicals, that's a big reason why evangelicals supported Donald Trump in 2016. If you're going to replace Nikki Haley for Mike Pence, look, Nikki Haley's good with evangelicals. Mike Pence is great with evangelicals. I think it's a net loss for the president if that ever happens. It's not going to happen, though.
Jonathan, you're out with a scoop just before showing up here about some changes at the Department of Homeland Security, a top aide resigning. What's going on over at DHS?
There are really growing tensions between the White House and parts of DHS. Kevin McAleenan, the acting secretary, is not trusted within the White House. The president associates him with the Obama administration. He served under Obama. The president has called him in meetings an Obama guy. And one of his top aides resigned today. The White House has been frustrated with a number of their rollouts of policies. They were frustrated about the Flores rollout this week. This is their big policy, allowing them to detain families together for longer than the 20 days. They felt that DHS buried that. It was a really big policy thing that they buried. The president was also, I'm told, very frustrated with the coverage of the ICE raids earlier this month. There was, Drudge had a banner, and I think Breitbart, etc., saying that there were only 35 people arrested. And they pushed out, actually, another person at ICE who was running comms over that. So there's a lot of stuff brewing kind of below the surface, and it's starting to percolate up. Yeah.
Finally, just a few seconds left here, but thoughts on Sean Spicer joining Dancing with the Stars? David and then Jonathan.
That's all a bunch of ridiculous stuff. Give me a break. Well, though it's
Will you watch that?
Sure, absolutely, I'm going to watch. And Rick Perry, by the way, and Tom DeLay, former politicians, Republicans were on. There was no big deal. But in the age of Trump, it's all toxic.
I think it's a great move. Very strategic. It's just great strategy all around, right?
We're going to have to leave it there, guys. Well, thank you, Jonathan. David, appreciate you guys being with us.
Well, coming up, Democrats and immigration advocates push back against the president's plan to end catch and release.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Come home to the Southern Gospel Station from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern Gospel favorites. CBN Southern Gospel. Available now at cbnradio.com.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come with...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
President Trump's latest move to curb illegal immigration is coming under fire.
Yeah, while it would keep families together, it would also hold them until their claims are processed.
Right now we have more than a million plus backlog in terms of the immigration courts.
Immigration advocates question the practicality of the move.
Most likely it's going to take several years. And then what the government's trying to do is say all of those people who are in detention, all the families who are in detention should be detained indefinitely while that process is pending.
The policy, announced Wednesday, would end a previous rule that children detained with their families could be held for 20 days. Now families would be kept together and held until their court date. Acting DHS Secretary Kevin McAleenan defended the move and also unveiled plans for new housing with medical facilities, soccer fields, and even access to video conferencing for court proceedings. He said the old agreement basically served as an incentive for illegal entry.
Human smugglers advertise, and intending migrants know well that even if they cross the border illegally, arriving at our border with a child has meant that they will be released into the United States to wait for court proceedings that could take 5 years or more.
Democrats are also blasting the change, accusing the president of wanting to punish children.
This president is absolutely determined to carry out maximum cruelty with little children who are brown.
Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi adding in a statement, quote, "The administration is seeking to codify child abuse." President Trump says congressional inaction is creating the crisis at the border.
If the Democrats would meet and we could fix the loopholes and asylum, which is what you're talking about to an extent. But let me just tell you, very much I have the children on my mind. It bothers me very greatly.
The president is also coming under fire for considering ending birthright citizenship, which is guaranteed in the 14th Amendment.
We're looking at that very seriously, birthright citizenship, where you have a baby in our land, you walk over the border, have a baby. Congratulations, the baby's now a U.S. citizen. We're looking at it very, very seriously.
Coming up, we take you to ground zero of the homeless epidemic. Our in-depth report up next.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the Sleep Doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Welcome back. Critics say the City of Angels has become a disease-ridden dump and ground zero of a staggering public health crisis.
The 60,000 homeless in Los Angeles are leaving piles of garbage and even human waste in the streets. And as Ben Kennedy reports, the state and city government refuse to deal with this dangerous epidemic.
Homeless advocates say this is a crisis and are even reaching out to the White House hoping President Trump can help.
What you're seeing is a row of tents.
Those rows make up Skid Row, a 50-block area with the country's largest homeless population that's only continuing to grow.
California is experiencing a massive spike in its rodent population.
Reform California reports this rampant rat infestation has even caused the spread of dangerous diseases like typhus. Dr. Drew Pinsky calls it a health crisis, something he's not seen in this country for 100 years. He even compared downtown LA to a third world country because of its public health problems and lack of sanitation.
Rats have overtaken the city. It's not consistent with civilization. How many must die before we change directions?
In 2019, homeless numbers in LA County rose by 12% to nearly 59,000 people. To top that, a quarter of the country's homeless population live in California.
I have to respond to the systemic failures of our country in helping people like this. And it's not going to be pretty, but it worked.
Officer Dion Joseph has covered life on the skids here for 22 years, helping people like Rose who battle drug addiction for more than a decade.
God bless you, baby.
Thanks to people like Officer Joseph, Rose is now clean.
Now I got keys to my home, baby.
Yes.
How does it feel? It feels good. You can wake up knowing you're gonna wake up and everything's gonna be all right.
Has Rose been an inspiration to many to take the next step?
Rose is an inspiration to me. I don't know how many people she's inspired in the street, but she's an inspiration to me. She's why I keep doing what I do.
Now, success stories like Rose are needed more than ever. Andy, would you consider this to be a crisis?
It is absolute FEMA-like, Red Cross-like, National Guard-like disaster. It is an epidemic of homelessness.
Reverend Andy Bales heads up Union Rescue Mission, the largest homeless shelter and recovery program in the country. Bales' dedication to helping those in need led to the loss of his leg due to a flesh-eating disease he contracted while handing out water to the homeless.
After you lost your leg, did that ever deter you from getting back out there to help people?
No, I actually missed 4 days of work because I had my leg taken off. What will Jesus do miraculously through us today? Without that faith, we couldn't do what we do.
For many on Skid Row, the missions here are the only hope of growing out of poverty.
We've been here for 25 years in the neighborhood. We've never left.
Reverend Matthew Barnett's Dream Center is a Skid Row mainstay. helping those facing abuse, addiction, and poverty.
I think the goal is to try to get people out of survival mindset, because people get desperate when they're trying to survive.
Survival for this part of East Central LA may depend on changing laws in D.C.
Let's change laws and make it easier for their loved ones to gain conservatorships over them and take control of their lives so they're not in crisis or walking down the streets of Skid Row.
Now, the LA Homeless Services Authorities report that women and children make up 40% of the homeless population. One more reason why Officer Joseph says more shelters are needed to help families, kids, and the elderly. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, Los Angeles.
Coming up, we explain how a fort in Virginia saw both the beginning and the end of slavery in America, as the nation marks an important milestone.
Prophecy thousands of years old,
We were called to be a light to the world.
being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
by sharing their knowledge
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
and their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
A piece of land in Virginia is home to events that led to the beginning and the end of a shameful piece of American history.
That's right. This month marks 400 years since the first enslaved Africans reached American shores at Point Comfort in what is now known as Fort Monroe in Hampton County. Mouthful. Hundreds of years after the arrival of slavery, that same peninsula became a refuge for enslaved people during the Civil War. Called Freedom's Fortress, Fort Monroe became a Union stronghold in Confederate territory where freedom seekers escaped from slave states, took refuge behind Union lines.
Well, that's it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a good night.